So welcome. As I said, the format of this is really straightforward. It's a roundtable. I share some best practice or some information in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on what it is. And then we open it up to just a general discussion, typically about the content or about the topic that we're covering off, but often we go off at tangents. And it's just a way of helping each other, I suppose, within our career. We are working change and transformation, and the best practice ideas, the stuff that we look to share, really falls into three areas. Really, we try to make them applicable to your career, your business if you're building a business, and many of them are transferable into general life because they're life skills. So I think today is one of those. It's about following on from last week's one, really, where last week we spoke about copy and getting copy right and writing copy in the right way, and that was applicable to all those three areas. And if you haven't seen that, then it's available on through the Facebook group. Let me know and I'll send you a link. Today's goes into a little bit more detail about what that structure of any communication could be. And we're talking about the 6 steps to storytelling success. And again, I think, started off looking at it from a marketing perspective and how can you best position yourself, either through a CV, through an interview, through a marketing piece. But it's applicable in terms of driving and engaging people within a change initiative. It's applicable to engaging people within your personal life. So hopefully you'll find it useful. And as we go through, if you've got any questions, please shout up. If you've got any points to add, please shout up. Don't necessarily wait until the end. So let me share my screen. So let me kick off straight away then. So what again? Why does it matter? We always start with this question, and I think we've just touched on it. Really, it's a really popular technique now within marketing communications, and we'll sort of develop that off in due course around why that is the case. But fundamentally, it's a really effective way to engage audiences and to convey information in a really informal way, and a way that doesn't come across as being overtly salesy, doesn't come across as being overtly sort of trying to persuade people, but in a natural way. And we all like stories. If you think back to our childhood, we were all brought up on stories. So what we're going to talk about today is what really makes a good story. The 6 steps in this process. You might feel that there's other elements that I've missed out, which we can cover in due course. But these are the 6 steps that I think are the difference between what makes a good story and a bad story, I suppose. So, number 1. It needs to have drama. If you think back to, if you're a James Bond fan, if you think back to all of the James Bond films, when they start off, they don't start off in a once upon a time type of thing and start to build up. What they start off with is some real action. They create drama right from the very first moment. He's usually running around, he's usually doing loads of stuff. And there's drama from that first moment, and what it does, it drags you into that film, it drags you into that story. So when we're putting messages together or materials together, start creating that drama from the first stage, because it starts to pull on people's emotions. And when you're talking about real life stories, don't dumb it down. Don't take out all the bad bits, because that breaks trust. Real life has these ups and downs, so acknowledge them, and people will really start to relate to them, because fundamentally they're going through similar types of ups and downs. So as an example, what I'm going to do throughout this sort of these 6 steps is almost tell you a little bit about my story and how I try to position my story with people. So my dramatic statement, if I've got the opportunity, is something like this. It's 15th of November. That's when I decided enough was enough. So with that statement, there's a couple of the people that I talk to, they do a number of things. One, they try to work back and say, what was the 15th of November? What happened? Was it some historical event? So they're starting to think about that, but by doing that, they're starting to engage. And then they naturally start to say, well, what happened? Why was enough enough? And it starts to drag them into engaging with you and asking that clarification question. So the next step is relatability. And within that, it's again, and we keep touching on this over all of these roundtables, it's positioning stuff with your audience in mind. It's really focused upon making sure that you are talking to the right people and positioning what you're saying, your story, to those people. So if your story is, if you're talking to people that are like you or will experience some of the things that you're experiencing, if they'll relate to you in a much more a much easier way. They'll really start to engage with you because they're naturally drawn to stories that they can relate to. So again, in my example, I go on and sort of expand why the 15th of November was such a critical day by sort of saying something along the lines of, like, for the last 20 years, I'd left home at silly o'clock on a Monday morning, gone to the other end of the country, or in some cases other countries, and stayed in a hotel all week to return home on a Friday night and start the whole process off a couple of days later. So for those people who are working in change and transformation, that's not untypical. They can relate to it. And again, all you're trying to do with that is get them to come in and be part of the story moving forward. So step number 3 is immersion. And again, it sort of takes that relatability to its next level. It's trying to get them into the story, to get them to see themselves in that story. So again, if you think back to childhood or when you're reading a book or anything, the really good stories really create images in your mind and really start to position yourself in that environment and looking at it from slightly different angles. That's what we try to do with any story here. So the more they can put themselves in the story, then again, the more likely they are to start to change their opinion. So again, as an example, I will then start to go and say, well, a lot of people, the fact that I say that I stay in hotels, I'm traveling across the country and overseas at times, they think that's a really good life. They think, they think it's quite exotic. Or hotels, travel, good income levels, etc., etc. But then I sort of pivot around to say, but those of us, those of you who are like me, working that change and transformation, they realise that actually that nomad life is not as exotic as other people think. And if you've done that, and if you've been in that world, you know what it's like. You go into a hotel, and for the first couple of nights, it's okay because you're in a different environment, you're checking it out. But after a couple of weeks, you've gone through the room service menu, you've done everything, and you're just into that routine then of every other night staying in a hotel room. So again, it's all about getting them to really get into your story in a bigger way. Keep it simple is point number 4, because simple stories tend to be strong stories. The easier people can understand it, the better. And just keep it into the key messages that you want to get across. Yeah, color it and bring sort of the color into your story, but don't keep going down different tangents. It gets confusing. We've all watched films, we've all read books where actually you've no idea what's happening because they just keep going from one side to the other, and it takes a big commitment to see that book through or to watch that film to the end to try to understand what's happening. And which is fine if you decided to go to the cinema and watch a film or you bought a book, you've probably got more commitment. But if you're just trying to, as we are here, trying to engage people and trying to bring people on your journey or influence to do things that you want them to do, you've got to hit them and you've got to take them with you quite quickly. So keep it really simple. So my way of that is saying that on that day, I took a decision that would change my life completely. Again, it's saying I've taken one decision, it's changed my life. It starts to re-engage them into that. Well, what does that mean? What does that, what happened and what decision did you take? Number 5, if you can create the story in a way that almost leads the reader down the path that you want to take them down, but they can start to picture what's going to happen moving forward or what may happen moving forward. Again, it's getting them really engaged with you. And that simple story and in almost feeding them through the route that you want to take, they can start to see the different options that lie ahead. They start to think in their own minds. Well, what would I do? What decision would I take? And again, you've got them engaged, and that's a critical part of any story. So again, in my case, I decided that on that day I decided to pivot away from exchanging my time for money and started the process of building a consulting business. So again, if they've gone down that route of saying, you got to a stage in a career, you've realised that you needed to change. They've got, they could associate the fact that if they stayed in hotels and been away from home a lot, they might have that same issue and same challenge that I had. They might get to that point of saying, yeah, I need to make a decision to change what I'm doing. They probably got in their mind, well, there may be an option of going perm, there may be an option of doing this, there may be an option of doing that. The fact that I've said my option, the option that I took was consultancy, they might relate to it. But again, they've started to think about the options in their own mind, what it means to them. And the final one is that familiarity. So the more familiar a story feels, the more powerful it is, and the more easier it is for the readers to fill in the gaps. It builds trust. So again, coming back to the way that I position my story as an example, I'm relaying activities, relaying stories that for those of us who work in change and transformation, many people will have similar sort of levels of experiences. So they'll be familiar with some of the challenges, they'll be familiar with some of the frustrations, they'll be familiar with, the fact that, for many years I didn't attend a parents' evening because I was the other side of the country, and the issues and the challenges that can create. So if you can get that familiarity and people can almost see themselves in your story, you've really got them to the point where they'll look to move forward. So again, I tend to finish off mine with sort of over the years since, I've made plenty of mistakes, but I've worked through those and now lead a practice with delivering 7-figure revenues. It's almost saying, this is where I was, this is the decision I took, and actually here's the outcome. And within that, if people are interested in understanding more and want the sort of outcomes that I achieve, you get them to start talking and engaging with you to find out more information and to find out more lessons in terms of how you actually move from A to B. And the bonus thing though is really it's about that trust in the person that's telling the story. So our feelings about the storyteller influence our reaction to the story. So if you are flip-flopping from different stories, being inconsistent in the way that you talk about your history or talk about this subject matter, that trust won't be there. But if you can consistently relay the story, elaborate on it in different ways, get at that core message in the right way through lots of different media, you'll have natural trust when you're engaging with people. So yeah, that's what I think are the 6 steps to storytelling success. If you want to learn a little bit more about what we do and how we do it, then I'm more than happy to get on a call with you to explore that further. And if you are in the mindset of looking to pivot into more of a consulting world, and you might have already done that, but we've set this what we call a scorecard up, which I think it's 22 questions on 5 areas, and you get a personalised report highlighting the areas where you might need a little bit more focus. Really simple application for you to complete, but really valuable outputs to it. So if you want to take a look at that, there's the link, and be more than happy to talk about it in due course. So with that, let me stop sharing and open it up to the floor to see what your thoughts are and what your experiences have been in using storytelling within your career or your business, or indeed your personal life.